is Zachary Ramirez-Icaza, and I'm going to be telling the story of the painting Father and Son by Johann Jensen. Lucas Jensen, a 32-year-old Jewish man, was walking home from his job as a clerk at an important Amsterdam lending bank. He was walking home to his house on 207 Adelgade Street in the Jewish quarter of Amsterdam. It was May 10th, 1940. He was happy, eager to get home to start the weekend with his family. His grandparents had come to visit from Rotterdam. They were frightened by the war in Europe, the fall of Poland, and especially by the rumors about what the Germans were doing to the Jewish people who lived in the Reich. However, as he boarded his usual number 7 streetcar to take him home, he heard the air raid siren go off, and everyone was ordered to dismount the streetcar and were told to go and seek shelter. Now Lucas was running, flat out sprinting to get home, while the air raid klaxon continued to howl amongst the suddenly chaotic and bustling crowd of people, all trying to get home as fast as possible. He burst through the front door of his house to see his wife, Clara, frantically throwing coats hanging by the door into a large suitcase. When she saw him, she looked at him in dismay and said, "The Nazis are coming. They crossed the border 2 hours ago. The radio said they declared war and have invaded." Lucas felt his head spin, and the floor seemed to fall out from under him. He knew his country wasn't strong enough to fight off the Germans, and he knew what the Germans would do when they came. 2 months later, and the Jensen family had managed to survive the first couple months of the German occupation by taking advantage of the chaos of war to flee to the countryside, to the small town of Schagen, and changing their names. They also pretended to be Christians and attended a local Protestant church. Despite an initially cool reaction, soon the Jensens were accepted into the community and blended right in, despite the presence of Wehrmacht soldiers. However, his daughter Sophia was heard reciting prayers in Hebrew at the local elementary school, and soon they heard a knock at the door and were being crammed into stinking, stuffy rail cars. They were sent to the Westerbork transit camp, where they were temporarily interned along with thousands of other Jews. But in early December 1942, the Jensens were forced onto another train. But instead of overcramped passenger cars, this time they were crammed by the hundreds into train cars meant for cattle, destination unknown. They spent 3 days in the cars, listening to the others around them moan in pain and cry out for lost family members. At about noon on the 3rd day, they arrived at a rail station and were herded out onto the platform by SS men with whips and batons. They were separated into 2 lines. Lucas and his son Johann were in the one to the right, and his wife, daughters, and parents were in the other. He saw them march towards a large building with smoke billowing from a chimney at the back. That was the last time he would ever see his wife and daughters. A few months later, and it was mid-February. By then, Johann had caught pneumonia and was very ill. He wasn't the only one, as conditions in the camp fostered sickness and disease. A steady diet of starvation rations, bitter cold, and brutal labor ensured that everybody in Auschwitz was suffering from something. Lucas knew that his son could only fake health for so long, and dreaded the day when his selection would finally come. Eventually, Johann could barely stand when he heard the bell for selection rang. He gave his father a drawing he had made, and told him it was a drawing of the 2 of them together. He made Lucas promise to save it, and to keep it safe, so that after they were gone, some records of their lives would remain. Johann was sent to the gas chamber the next day, and Lucas gave the drawing to a friend, Felix. Felix was a member of the Sonderkommandos. The Sonderkommandos were a special unit of Jewish prisoners who were responsible for the use and maintenance of the camp crematoria. Due to their grisly duties, the Sonderkommandos were given privileges not shared by the rest of the prisons, like better rations, clothing, and sleeping spaces. According to SS records, Lucas Jensen, also known as prisoner number 140602, was executed via gas on May 13, 1944. However, his friend Felix survived the war and was liberated by the Soviet troops in 1945 and eventually made it to Israel. He kept the drawing that Lucas had gave to him, and he remembered his story. And when the Yad Vashem Memorial Center was opened in 1943, he took the picture there, where it was added to the repository of Holocaust art, and the story of his friend Lucas and his family were immortalized in the Hall of Archives.